Bizarre Reality Media.
Indiana County 911. My brother's gone. Can you be a little more specific, sir? He took my brother. Who took him? I don't know who took him. I don't know what. Sir, take a breath. Explain to me what happened.
And I looked out and there was this big red blinking UFO.
I can just say this. Something's going on in the woods. Something's going on. They're not dogs. They're not coyotes. What could it be, right?
I had an encounter with a skunk ape, and it completely altered the course of my life.
I found a skull. I think you guys are going to want to come film this.
Put him out.
I just say it.
Sightings of a UFO hovering over a barn.
Millie woke up from a dream, and when I went into the bedroom, she said there's a monster on the wall.
They saw that the creature had run through a barbed wire fence. They were able to obtain hairs. They sent the hairs to their lab, and it came back as an unknown creature.
Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin.
Welcome back, Bizarrites, to the most bizarre show on the internet. I am the one that some people refer to as Shayn Squatch. And if you're ever wondering how the dynamics of that works, I have a simple answer for you.
Sasquatch is my daddy and he's going to protect me.
Yes, Sasquatch is my daddy. And alongside me, I have the big bad boo daddy himself, Sir Orin Felix.
Daddy!
So is that how a Shayn Squatch is created? It's when a Sasquatch and a human woman love each other very much?
Yeah, that's typically how it works. I mean, you look at all the DNA evidence, and that seems to definitely be how it works. You got the female mom, and you have the unknown father, which is clearly a Sasquatch, which is what makes me Shayn Squatch.
Okay. Well, hey, there's a lot of different directions we could go with, like unknown fathers and stuff like that. So I'm just going to leave that one alone.
My dad is very elusive, my friends. I'm sorry.
Is he blurry in all the family photos?
Dude, he is the fucking hide and seek champion. But I heard he's running for president in 2026. Big America for Bigfoot.
Okay.
And leading into our exciting stuff that we got going on today, well, somewhat exciting for something that's going to be happening in the future. For anybody that hasn't been catching it, we are trying to put together a Halloween special for you guys. We're going to be sharing some Halloween stories and hopefully have some people call in and leave their experiences. We could definitely do it live, but I'm kind of planning on doing it somewhat pre-recorded. So if you guys don't mind calling in, leaving some of your bizarre experiences with either cryptids, aliens, UFOs, or anything weird, you guys can always call into our hotline, which is 313-364-1551. And of course, you guys can do that 24/7. And if you guys would like to text your story, also definitely an option too. And as we mentioned last week, we can also change your voice if you want to remain anonymous. But specifically, like we said last week, you have to be Robot Alex Jones.
Yeah, scary robot voices only.
Scary robots only. Or maybe disembodied voices. That might be kind of fun too. That might be weird to hear like a paranormal tale from like the perspective of the ghost. Just ooh.
It's so damn literal at that point though.
Might be fun. You gotta show different perspectives, right?
And speaking of different perspectives, our next episode of Bizarre Inquiries, our YouTube live show, is going to be October the 2nd. That's a Thursday. It's going to be roughly 7:15 Eastern time on the Bizarre Reality, still getting used to that, YouTube channel. So you guys be sure to submit any questions or articles or videos or anything like that you want us to inquire about.
Preferably
and also,
Halloween related, because it will be a Halloween special too.
Definitely Halloween related. And you guys also be sure to join us in the chat as we're going live.
And if you guys might want to send us anything for that or contact us for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through our email, which is bizarreencounters@outlook.com, or you guys can always call into our hotline. And in case you missed that number the first time, it is 313-364-1551.
And if you guys would like to support the show in other ways, Shayn, tell them how they can do that.
First and foremost, you guys can go and check out our awesome Bizarre Reality Media Patreon with 2 tiers available, ad-free and ad-free/early access and full access. And with the full access, you get video versions of episodes, the 0.5 episodes of Inquiries, and a bunch of other really cool stuff over there. Definitely worth going and checking out. And you guys can always try a 7-day free trial if you guys want to see what it's all about.
And you can also check out the Bizarre Reality merch store with t-shirts starting at the absurdly low and oddly specific price of just $15.68 plus shipping.
Holy shit!
What that guy said.
Just look at the savings.
And I know times are tough out there, but if you guys would still like to support the show in some other ways,
you can leave a review.
You guys can follow the show on Instagram and Facebook.
You can share the show with friends or family or neighbors or people you don't like.
Or you guys can always go and check out the live shows on the Bizarre Reality Media YouTube and Twitch channels.
And as always, all this shit we've mentioned is in the link tree in the show description. So tonight's episode is one that Shayn put together. I've read through the notes and I'm super excited about it. It's a story that I wasn't familiar with, but I think it's going to hit on a lot of things that we talk about pretty regularly on the show. So Shayn, without further ado, why don't you get into tonight's topic?
So this one is kind of an obscure one. Just like Cisco Grove, this is one of those ones that it appears to only be talked about mainly in the first-hand encounters from the book. So what I ended up doing today for you guys was putting together basically this book into a condensed 8-page format. And if anybody wants to see this book, it is up on screen right now. It is called Alien Abduction of the Wyoming Hunter, first-person account of Carl Higdon, October 25th, 1974. And this was documented by his wife. And we'll get a little bit more into the picture and everything else as we go on. But if you guys want to get more information on this story than what I provide, you guys can always go and check out that book. And I definitely recommend it. So getting into tonight, in 1974, a man named Carl Higdon had a series of bizarre experiences while hunting elk in southern Wyoming. He was taken aboard a strange transparent craft before being literally dropped back to Earth in a state of utter confusion. Carl's case is significant, not just for its bizarre elements, but for the fact that it appears to have been an aborted UFO abduction. For that reason, it may tell us something not just about UFO abduction experiences, but also a subset of missing persons cases known as Missing 411, which may share a similar cause.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And if you're not familiar with what Missing 411 is, then I feel like you've been missing out on this whole thing, and you should probably go back and check that out, because we've been talking about that one for a hot minute. I don't think we did a full episode on it, but we did cover kind of around the episode with our National Parks episode a while back ago.
Yeah, we talked about it quite a bit in the national parks and Missing 411 and kind of feral people episode. We've probably done, what, is a year or so ago at this point?
And we've talked about it sprinkled in with a lot of different episodes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you're into the phenomenon, we're going to somewhat assume that you know what Missing 411 is. And if you don't, definitely recommend going and checking it out. But you'll kind of get filled in a little bit more as we go along with this one.
Absolutely.
But this one, like a lot of the stuff we've been doing, this one will be interjected into probably a lot. There's a lot of connections that we want to point out with you guys that we've been following lately. But without further ado, let's get into the abduction itself. In late October of 1974, Carl Higdon was 40 years old and working as an oil driller for AM Well Service in Riverton, Wyoming. On Friday, October 25th, he had an unexpected day off, so he decided to go elk hunting. He packed his new 7mm Magnum rifle and headed south towards McCarty Canyon, which is around 40 miles south of where he lived in the small city of Rawlins. And that's not Rawlins, North Carolina. That's Rawlins, Wyoming. And I'm hopefully saying that correctly, because that's a confusing word.
That's what it looks like to me. W or Rawlins.
Or Rawlins?
That's got to be Rawlins.
Rawlins. You got to say it with a draw. So Rawlins.
Like a cowboy?
Yeah, exactly. It is Wyoming, so it fits, right?
Exactly.
During his drive, Carl pulled over to help two fellow hunters whose pickup truck wouldn't start. Over coffee, the hunters told Carl that he'd have better luck in the woods. Carl took their advice and headed to the northern edge of Medicine Bow National Forest. He parked his pickup on a hill and had a brief discussion with the game warden, which a lot of the time you don't want to do, by the way.
But right here off the rip, we're already talking about national forests.
Yep, I was waiting for you to pop in with that one, too.
Yep.
Around 4 p.m., when Carl began his hunt, he walked less than a mile into the forest when he arrived at a clearing. He noticed 5 elk 100 feet away, all entirely still. He pointed his rifle at the largest male and pulled the trigger. To his surprise, no sound was made, and the bullet left the barrel in slow motion. It stopped around 50 feet in front of him, seemingly hitting something invisible before dropping into the snow. Strangely, the elk didn't flinch, and Carl noticed that the forest was unnaturally silent.
So, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick,
Absolutely.
we got a couple things here. First off, it seems like in a lot of these, and I know you're going to kind of tie this in later in the episode, but like missing persons cases and also like historic fairy accounts, a lot of times they happen in a clearing in the woods. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then also the whole thing about the forest being unnaturally silent. I mean, how many times do we talk about this and like the Oz effect or whatever with Bigfoot cases and whatnot? So, I mean, we're already checking off a lot of boxes and we're only a couple paragraphs in here.
You know what I find kind of strange is that it seems like the forest goes silent when there's apex predators around. That being said, even like bigger game around, like everything goes silent. Why is it that it doesn't go silent when humans are around? You ever notice that? Like, we're apex predators. Why do the bugs and stuff just not cease to make sound when we're around?
Maybe nature knows we're not the apex predator.
I mean, in comparison to what else might be out there. I mean, they hear that UFO humming and they're like, "Yep, silent."
Or those dogmans out there.
Yeah, one of them, or the Sasquatches, or the ghosts, or anything weird that might be in the woods. After retrieving the bullet and putting it in his shirt pocket, Carl noticed a large transparent box on the ground that was 5 feet high and 5 feet wide and 7 feet long. And I already want to interject on this part. I don't know if we ever had him on the show, but have we talked to anybody from the Meadow Project on this show, or has that just been on Inquiries?
I don't think we've talked to anybody on this show.
So we'll have to have him on because I've had him on Inquiries a couple times, but he talks about this area that he has that he works in that's just the big clearing. That's what the Meadow is, the Meadow Project. And they have all these like weird anomalies that happen. And one of them that happened was the fact that there was this like box thing that they were catching on their radars. And when they like walked into it, like the people that walked into it didn't notice any change themselves from their first person, but from the people observing, they said that they turned into orbs and moved a couple hundred feet forward. So this whole idea of a big clearing with these transparent boxes, this might link into some of the work with Trey Hudson, the Meadow Project too. So maybe we'll have to have him on as a guest at some point to kind of dive into it a bit, but...
Yeah, for sure. That sounds super interesting.
Maybe we can try to get him on maybe this month or next month. I'll try to hit him up after the show. It might be a fun one to do after this one.
Sounds good.
So hopping back in, it looked to be made of glass and was empty inside. Sensing something nearby, Carl turned around to find a strange-looking humanoid floating upright before him, wearing a black suit similar to that of a scuba diver. Carl estimated the being to be around 6 foot 2 inches tall and 180 pounds. Its skin was like that of an Eastern Asian person with a face similar to a human's, but with no chin and a severely receded jaw. It had no eyebrows, no ears, and small slanted eyes. Its coarse, straw-colored hair stood straight out from its head like bristles on a broom, grouped into small bunches spaced a half-inch apart. There were 2 distinct rods coming from the top of its head that looked to be antennas. The entity was wearing black shoes and a wide belt with a six-pointed star where the buckle should be, and a yellow symbol below it on a type of small apron. Its legs were noticeably bowed outward. It had no hands, but there was a cone-shaped appendage, and I'm sure you want to make a comment on this in a second, or device sticking out of its right sleeve. Higdon referred to the being as a man, suggesting that it had some male characteristics.
I'll let you take it away with the cone-shaped appendage because I have some other thoughts that I want to throw in about stuff in this paragraph.
Okay, so already off of that, if anybody listened to our episode about Pascagoula, that was one of the main things with the Pascagoula abduction was there was the 2 creatures, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, that originally showed up to abduct the 2 fishermen, and they both had cone-shaped hands. The only difference being that they were on both hands and their entire body was metallic, but the only time that I've really seen this cone-shaped thing happening, and I'm sure that there probably is a lot more cases, is this one and Pascagoula. So, I don't know, there's something weird with that one. But Pascagoula also was one of the ones that we always talk about with our continued experiment theory, that there was the mask line of the female one that was inside the ship when they got abducted. And maybe as we go farther along with this one, we might catch some more human ties, but, you know, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, definitely some interesting connections between Pascagoula and this one. Some other things I noticed, there's a lot of like Men in Black connections with all this too. First off, they talk about how the skin was that of an East Asian person. And in Keel, he always talks about how these Men in Black entities have, you know, vaguely Asian type skin. And also he's talking about the entity wearing black shoes. Keel also talks about how these things wear like big, thick rubber-soled shoes a lot of times. So it doesn't necessarily comment on the soles of the shoes, but thought that was interesting nonetheless. The fact that it had straw-colored hair, we talk about like the Nordic extraterrestrials a lot. Just something else I made a note of. These two are a little bit more tenuous, but I thought I'd mention them nonetheless. 6-pointed star, it's kind of like a Star of David type thing. I'm just going to leave it there, not going to comment anymore. And then also the fact that they talk about how it has an apron. And at first I thought this was kind of an odd detail. And then I got to thinking, okay, what's the only thing on the show we've talked about aprons? And it's the Freemasons. So
also to make another weird connection too, that I was talking to somebody semi-recently who he was basically tearing down the idea of satanic ritual abuse. And he was talking about this idea about splitting the mind into 4 different fractions. And he was saying something about one, I'm going to break it down really badly, but he's basically saying that one of the beings that kind of controls one of the hemispheres has a symbol that looks down and the other one has a symbol that looks up, and you put them together and it looks like either one, the Freemason symbol, or the Star of David. So there's also something that kind of links in with the Star of David and Freemasonry and this whole idea of mind control, which might link back to some of our human stuff that we were mentioning earlier.
Yeah, so like I said, not to get too thick in the weeds with all that or too controversial, but just a couple little things I noticed there. And
I'm glad that you brought up the thing about Men in Black, because I didn't catch that one at first. But yeah, you are correct that when he was talking about it in the book for Mothman Prophecies, he always talked about the Asian-looking eyes. So really good catch there. I didn't catch that the first time. Yep.
Yeah.
We apologize, guys, for the interference, but we will be right back. And now back to the show. So hopping back in, and then we're already probably going to have another interjection here in a minute because this gets a little weird now. The entity moved towards Carl by floating above the snow. When it got within a few feet of Higdon, it asked him, "Are you hungry?" Even though its lips never moved when it spoke. Possibly like Sam the Sandown Clown. I mean, sounds pretty similar, right? Even asked the kids if they wanted to see a trick, if they were hungry, and did the thing with the berries in its eyes, if you remember.
Yeah, and it seems like, we thought Sam the Sandown Clown was kind of this oddball, kind of out of left field story when we covered that on the show. But then since we've done that episode, it seems like there's connections and things that have popped up pretty routinely about that story. So it's kind of funny that, this story that doesn't seem, quote unquote, to fit a lot of the motifs of abductions and alien visitations and whatnot. If you look hard enough and look into kind of the more weird stories like this one, there's a lot of similarities there.
And I mean, if you get into the possibility of these things being able to possibly change their appearance, you get into a lot of the stuff with Sam the Sandown Clown, and it's, the typical UFO motif. He had like the weird little metal shack looking thing. He spoke through this little thing where he was able to like speak into their heads. The only thing that throws people off is the fact that he appeared to look like he was made of wood, and he looked like a clown. So that being said, if they're trying to hide themselves, and again, that was a kind of an earlier case, is it possible that could have been some type of camouflage and everybody just gets thrown off by the visuals of it and not the finite details of it?
Well, and again, I mean, you're more familiar with the Sam story than I am, but didn't that story come kind of word of mouth from 2 children? So again, it could be one of those situations of them just describing what they saw with the best language they had.
Yep. And then the dad mainly believed it because he had the weird UFO experience like directly before, and then he ended up having another one pretty soon after. So, I mean, maybe also it connects in with the human idea that we were mentioning.
For sure.
But hopping back in, Carl replied, "Yes." Then a small envelope or packet of 4 pills floated towards him, and the entity told Carl to take one. Carl mentioned that he was normally extremely reluctant to take pills, but he promptly swallowed one as if he were being controlled, as he claimed. The entity then asked Carl if he wanted to go with it, and he replied, "I might as well." Carl expressed his later choice was his own. Having read about UFO encounters in the past, he had previously resolved to go with the UFO knots should he ever encounter one himself. The entity pointed its cone-shaped appendix at Carl, and then suddenly he found himself elsewhere.
So something that I thought was kind of interesting, and remember a long time ago when we talked to Alan Greenfield, which for you listeners out there, if you're not familiar with him and his work, he's kind of a practicing magician, occultist, whatever. But anyway, he's got a lot to do with the Hellier documentary series. I'm sure a lot of you guys out there have listened to or seen that and the work of Dana and Greg Newkirk. But anyway, it's in that documentary, I believe, that they talk about the phrasing of euphonauts and how that's like a very niche phrasing for aliens, basically.
And he specifically used that, by the way. That's why I put that in there, is because it was weird.
Well, I figured that since you had it in quotation marks, and I was like, wow, that's kind of odd that this guy used that specific phrasing, because either that was like almost downloaded onto him in some way, or he was kind of deeper in this whole subject than he kind of led on just from the notes here.
See, I kind of feel like that might be the case, because also think about the time, this is one of those times you weren't just going around telling everybody like, yeah, I love reading UFO books. I love doing this. I love doing that. So, even if he was reading it for fun, I mean, clearly this guy had some interest in UFOs, because that wasn't one of those things that was like ridiculously prominent. It was like people that were looking for it would go find it. And especially using that terminology, I feel like this guy kind of knew a little bit more than he let off originally with this encounter.
Yeah, I mean, this is 1974. It's not like you could just Google something on the internet and read a couple articles. I mean, to find this information, you would have to go and seek it out. And yeah, for him to use that phrasing leads me to believe that he knew a little bit more than he let on.
Exactly. And this is about to get really, really weird. So now we're getting to inside the box.
What's in the box?
What's in the box? Carl, yeah, exactly. Carl's next memory was being inside the transparent rectangular box.
Fuck that.
Itself seemingly within a larger transparent structure, but still resting in the forest. Carl was sitting in a type of bucket seat with his arms and head restrained. In the reflection on the glass above him, he could see the 5 elk standing motionless in a cage. The entity from the forest was in the room, and 2 more similar beings were also nearby. Carl said, "You've got my elk." And one of the beings shrugged. Like, I don't know what the fuck to tell you, man. We got him. We got him. They're over here. The box lifted off the ground, and Higdon looked down to see his truck where he left it. But the main entity waved its arms, and the truck disappeared. Carl's next memory was seeing what he described as a blue ball and a huge marble, seemingly the earth in the distance far below him. The beings told Carl that they were going home, which they said was 163 light miles away. Then they put a helmet on him and had 6 wires sticking out of it in all directions, and fastened a strap under his chin. You got any comments yet?
Nope, you can keep rolling.
Okay. Next, everything went black before a bright light came on, causing Carl's eyes to burn in water. Carl was now standing in front of one of the transparent walls of the outermost structure, looking out into the giant, featureless space with no visible walls or ceiling. The light was coming from the top of the tower that he likened to the Space Needle in Seattle, Washington, with lights rotating around the top. Before the tower, he could see several human adults and children in casual discussion. The 2 entities, one being the one that Carl met in the forest, took him down a long walkway towards the tower. This time, Carl was floating, just like the entities. He was led to a door that lifted up before he was taken inside a larger room, while inside a 4 by 8 foot shield or wall dropped down in front of him, then lifted back up again into the ceiling. One of the entities then approached him and said, "You're not what we want. We'll take you back."
Okay, I do have a couple things I want to unpack here. So between the whole "you're not what we want, we'll take you back," and then like the bright light, this is very reminiscent of a lot of like near-death experience type things. And so I'm wondering, we talk a lot about the connection between near-death experiences and abductions and just all sorts of weirdness. So I thought that was kind of an odd connection. And then also we've just got typical UFO like eye burn stuff going on here.
And also, I forgot to bring it up a little bit earlier, but I was going to bring up this picture of Carl if anybody was curious to see it. And of course, once we get a little bit farther in, I will bring up some more pictures. But here's the one of Carl and his wife, if anybody was curious. And I'm trying to find this other picture here. I had a picture of this tower that he was describing, but now I can't figure out where it went. So I'm trying to see if I can find it again here. I may have accidentally deleted it, but I know I got it somewhere here.
That's the most Carl-looking person I've ever seen. Like, that dude's name has to be Carl.
Yeah, there's no doubt that guy's name is Carl.
Yeah, it just like all you listeners out there that aren't looking at the video right now, just think 1974 cowboy named Carl. I promise you that's what he looks like.
And also, I can't find the direct picture, but I did bring it up within another picture, so don't pay any attention to anything else around it. But this right here was the picture of this tower that he drew and was describing.
Okay.
Kind of strange, right?
Kind of like mushroom looking almost.
Yeah, which also makes it kind of weird with the Faye connection, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just to point that one out too. But all right, hopping back in here. Higdon was then lifted out of the room, back into the bright light. His eyes burned again, and the entities told him that the sun affected him in the same way when they were on Earth. Higdon was then floated inside of what he called a craft, where he encountered the entity from the forest who now identified himself as Azo-1. Azo explained that it, too, was a hunter, and that its kind had been coming down to Earth for many years in search of fish and animals to make into food pills. Each pill fed one of its kind for 4 days. Azo went on to say that their ocean had turned yellow and that all their fish had died. It then showed Higdon a map of its planet, which was at least partially reproduced in the symbol on Azo's apron mentioned earlier. It told him that the 9 planets of its solar system supplied the magnetic force, possibly even linking with my UFO theory and how I said that some of these UFOs might be able to fly, for their power. It also examined Higdon's rifle, remarking that it would have liked to keep the primitive weapon, but it was not allowed. Azo also told Carl that their kind wore black to protect them from our sun. So, you got any thoughts on that one yet?
I think the only thing I'll throw in here is, just the whole thing about how they've been coming to Earth for many years and basically harvesting animals. I know you're going to touch on it a little bit more, but that definitely gets back to, cattle mutilations and cattle abductions and things like that. So I think that was kind of an interesting little tidbit here.
When I first read that, when he said I'm a hunter, I thought it reminded me of Predator at first, and then it continued on with the of animals and fish. And I was like, oh, okay. But, maybe we're considered animals to them. So, like, is that really any more comforting? Probably not.
Hey, I guess it depends on what they're hungry for.
Well, they're calling our weapons primitive, so they might just see us like primitive apes. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're some of that animal that they consider. After the craft passed through a dark void, Carl could see that they'd arrived over the forest. Then Azo told Higdon it will see him. To his surprise, Carl then found himself floating down to the ground below the craft. Before landing, his foot slipped on a rock, causing him to fall, roll down the hill, and hurt his shoulder.
All right, so another John Keel Men in Black connection right here. When this entity told Higdon that it will see him, that reminded me of Indrid Cold saying that he would see. I'll see you in time, or I think that was the exact wording of it. If not, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I think that was it. By the way, was I'll see you in time, because we were discussing that a bit on the show.
But yeah, that sounds kind of vaguely reminiscent of that idea to me.
It's kind of creepy in the sense of you don't know whether they're saying, I'll see you, like, I'm going to come back and see you again, which is definitely creepy, or if it's more like, we're going to keep an eye on you. Because I feel like both are just as bad, right? Like, I don't want to see you again, dude.
I'm not sure which one's worse at that
point. Carl followed a nearby road until he came upon his pickup truck, but he didn't recognize it as his own. He sat in the truck and heard voices on the CB radio. After figuring out how to use it, he managed to connect with someone who turned out to be his boss, Roy Fleming. Fleming asked for his name and location, but to his confused state, Carl was not able to give either. I don't know, I am so cold, he simply declared that he was in a pickup truck with a funny stick in the middle, despite having learned how to drive a stick shift when he was a kid. And just to make a comment about the I don't know, I am so cold, doesn't that kind of sound a little bit like Fire in the Sky almost? Wasn't that kind of something along the lines of what he was saying when he was found on the side of the road is, I don't know where I am, I don't know who I am, I'm cold?
I am actually not that familiar with that story, so I'm going to leave that one to you.
But I'm pretty sure I feel like we've heard that before with UFO cases. Not that it's like some big thing, because assumably these people have been stripped and then put back down and stuff, but I don't know, I am so cold connection just seems kind of weird. Also with Ingrid Cold, possibly. I don't know, there's something weird with that,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought it was an interesting detail. I kind of highlighted it here in the notes. I didn't really have any thoughts about it, but I did, definitely, that was one that kind of raised red flags. There's something to unpack there. I'm just not quite sure what.
Maybe in a future episode, we'll end up coming back around to it. We'll just have to keep that one in the, the old file cabinet in the back of the noggin.
I'm sure it'll come back around.
Oh, yeah. So, getting into the rescue. It was around 6:30 p.m. when Fleming first heard from Higdon. Carl's wife, Marjorie, returned from work around 4 p.m. with a glowing, uneasy feeling and had an urge to get to her husband and was soon alerted to Carl's distress call on the CB. Carbon County Sheriff Charles Ogburn organized a search party consisting of himself, Deputy Sheriff Ed Tierney? I'm just going to go with that.
Looks good to me.
Tierney, and 4 local hunters. Marjorie called her friend, Marilyn James, whose husband, Don, took them out in his truck to help the search. Due to the muddy roads, the sheriff's team had great difficulty reaching the area where they suspected Carl's pickup truck to be. Marjorie and company were told to stay on the hill and await further command. After a long wait, Marilyn felt the truck moving before excitingly pointing to a larger moving star that was changing colors.
It's a UFO!
Everyone in the vehicle then watched for about 20 minutes as the sun moved in a large arc while flashing brightly, switching color from red to green to white. The search party announced that they'd found Carl around 11:40 p.m. His truck was found roughly 3 miles from where he'd originally parked it, stuck in a mud hole with no tire tracks leading to the site. While waiting for searchers to return to the forest gate, the trio noticed that a big, bright red-orange light was rising on the eastern horizon, one that they'd mistook to be the sunrise, only realizing how unusual it was after seeing the real sunrise later that morning. So I'm sure you already have a comment about the whole truck being in the random spot, no tire tracks leading up to it. I mean, definitely sounds like some missing 411 and some other weird UFO abduction stuff.
Yeah, I know you're going to touch on some of the missing 411 connections later, so I don't want to step all over that at this point. But I did think it was kind of interesting when they're talking about this star that changed colors. And let me find the quote here. Light moved in a large arc while flashing brightly, switching colors from red to green to white. This is like typical orb behavior, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Also mentioning the arc and like the color changing from the arc. I mean, not necessarily in the same context, but also kind of reminiscent of the robots in Cisco Grove, if you remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
How bizarre!
Yeah, for sure.
How bizarre!
As they say, how bizarre. When the search party returned, Marjorie immediately noticed that Carl was still in a confused, amnesia-like state. He had difficulty talking and didn't recognize her. Marjorie tried speaking to him, but he only looked back as though he was looking through her, in Marjorie's words. She then asked him if he had shot an elk. Carl looked up through the windshield and said, "They took my elk. They took my elk," in a type of sing-song voice. As Marjorie
Stop
just
you right there. Sing-song voice. What do we also talk about sing-song voices with all the time?
Faye?
Men in Black.
And Faye.
Yeah.
We're both going. I mean, they could both be coming from the same place too. I mean, that's a whole other topic for discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
Carl was visibly cold, and she tried to drape her coat over his shoulders, but he pulled back in fear, crying, "Don't touch me," which, typical UFO stuff, man. Talk about some deep-rooted trauma that he may not have even realized the edge of. Because, I mean, he definitely recounted the majority of his experience, but with a lot of this stuff, I feel like there's always these missing time components that, you know, he may have recounted it to the best of his recollection, but I still feel like there could have been some missing parts here.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially with the whole "don't touch me" thing, because realistically, from his encounter, I mean, they had him strapped to that chair bucket-looking thing with the wires coming out of his head, but they really didn't do any experiments or anything on him. But getting further into it,
probe him.
Yeah, they may have done a little bit more to him, and maybe that's why they threw him back, and he just may have had some memory loss in the process of that. But we'll get into that.
All right, guys, we got to take another break. We'll be right back. And now we're getting back to the bizarre.
On the drive to Carbon County Memorial Hospital in Rawlings, Carl asked Fleming why he wasn't dressed in black. "Doesn't the sun burn you?" When Carl arrived at the emergency room at 2 a.m., his eyes were watering profusely, apparently from the hospital lights. His shoulder was in pain, and he repeatedly asked for his pills that floated to you. No bruises, bleeding, or broken bones were found. Test results detected no drugs in his system. Dr. R.C. Tonko determined Carl was experiencing amnesic shock. When Marjorie asked him his name, he replied, "They keep calling me Carl. Who is Carl?" Getting into some more weird stuff with this stuff. I mean, I feel like when people have this much memory loss or they can't remember their name, all this type of stuff, but they can still recount their experience. Like I said, there was clearly some tampering going on, because I feel like, you know, traumatic events, you're definitely going to have some lapses in memory loss, but you're not going to have lapses in memory loss to the point where you don't remember your name simply from a traumatic event. They had to have been doing, again, more to him than what he remembered. Otherwise, I don't feel like he would have hit that point.
And kind of circling back around to your human intervention theory, if this was some sort of government alphabet agency or something like that that was doing some sort of experiment or test or whatever on this guy, we always talk about the Men in Black, like wiping your memory. So, I mean, that's just something I thought of too. There's just a ton of Men in Black connections with this, whether it be the Keel variety or the more nefarious government variety.
It's a conspiracy, man.
It's definitely a conspiracy, man. And now we're going to get into the point where I can start showing you guys some pictures. During this time at the hospital, Carl narrated some elements of his experience, but had trouble remembering it all. See, there you go. Marjorie gave him a pencil and paper and instructed him to write whatever he could recall. He drew a picture of the entity, then wrote the word Enders. The deputy sheriff later revealed that another man named Enders was in a different part of the forest that night. Carl also drew a forked road, a rough sketch of the transparent craft, listed 2 unidentified addresses, and made another note about a truck. And I'm going to bring this picture up for you guys. As I was mentioning to Orin before the show, for whatever reason, they don't include this picture in the book, so I had to do some digging here. But I guess if you want to kind of unpack what you think about this one a little bit, but it looks like the box with the chairs over here, whatever the thing was he was looking through, the random addresses, of course, the creature itself, and we'll get into a little bit better of a picture of it, and then whatever the splitting road thing is right here.
So very rudimentary drawing of the creature here. I think the one that you showed from the book cover is probably much more accurate. This kind of looks like a child's rendering of this thing.
This one's Carl's drawing. We'll get into the other one in a few minutes. He ended up having somebody do a rendition for him from him stating it. So we'll get into that picture, but this one's Carl's.
But what's kind of funny to me is, as rudimentary as the drawing of the entity looks, like this map, like fork in the road drawing looks like pretty fucking detailed. That looks like an actual like map drawing. And then the other thing I thought was interesting about this, did anybody look into these addresses at the time?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I'm kind of
seems like a super obvious thing. Like, I wonder what those meant, because this is almost like remote viewing shit at this point.
Yeah, there wasn't any mention of the addresses past that in the book. So I don't know. I don't think they did anything else with the addresses. I mean, I don't know.
And the kind of crappy thing about that is, like we talk about with a lot of stuff here recently, these older stories, we're so far removed from them now. Like, a lot of the information's missing and we can't find it. Like, whatever these addresses were, it would basically be impossible for us to go back and try to corroborate this at this point, I
mean, even if it was other locations that possibly somebody got picked up from, something like that, I mean, those same people wouldn't be there anymore at this point, assumably. So, again, you wouldn't be able to follow the trail anymore.
Well, and the street addresses could be totally different, too.
That, too, yeah. So, let's see. Higdon was released from the hospital the morning of Monday, October 28th. And now we're going to get into a bit of the aftermath of what had happened to Carl. Let me make sure I got the next picture up and ready here. The results of the X-ray provided by Dr. Tongo found nothing of concern, even though Carl's X-ray taken years before the incident had shown scar tissue on his lungs from a past case of tuberculosis. Carl also had several kidney stones before his experience, but none after. Still, days after being rescued, he experienced headaches and pain in his back. So, just to clarify, to make sure everybody caught that, he had scarring that disappeared and from his lungs from tuberculosis, and he had kidney stones that disappeared, but he experienced headaches and back pain. What's your thoughts on that one?
So it seems like a lot of time when we talk about these encounters with extraterrestrials and their craft and whatnot, super bad headaches lasting, days, weeks, months afterwards is a hallmark of these things. The only thing I could think of with back pain, if he truly did go up into space like he was talking about and, saw the Earth as a blue marble, it could be some sort of, gravity difference or whatever. That's the only thing I could think of with that.
That's what I was thinking too. Either one, it has something to do with gravity and him coming back down to Earth, and maybe even the same with the headaches because, your brain, I feel like, would kind of sit a little bit more suspended, then you get back down to Earth and then maybe has this kind of like pressure push down feeling.
Yeah.
Or on the other side, he's talking about his back and headaches. So is it possible that the reason they were able to cure some of these ailments is maybe they do something that involves the spine and the brain, because that connects into everything? So maybe the reason why you always hear stuff with the back and the brain with a lot of these UFO things is because that's their point of entry into whatever they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's definitely possible. And I know we're going to get into some more of the kind of healing aspects of this, so I'm going to save some of my thoughts for that for later.
And I'm going to bring this picture up real quick because this will be the next thing that we'll be getting into here. When Carl spoke to Sue Taylor, a reporter from the Daily Times of Rowling, he was still very much mystified by his experience, confessing that he must be crazy. Taylor's article, the first on the case, appeared on Tuesday, October 29th, which is what this article is that I got up for you guys. Fleming put Carl in touch with a local rehabilitation counselor who in turn suggested that he speaks with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, a psychologist at the University of Wyoming who is interested in UFO experiences. And
Dr. Leo Sprinkle is the greatest name I've ever heard.
Oh, and then here's Carl talking to Dr. Leo Sprinkle. And, where'd the picture go? I know I got it in here. There he is. There's Dr. Leo Sprinkles.
That's like pretty disappointing. I was expecting Dr. Leo Sprinkle to be much more lively than that. He just looks like an accountant or something.
An accountant or a creep? I could definitely go with creep. And then Sprinkles might be a good name then. Maybe that's his...
Yeah, he definitely does not look like a Leo Sprinkles.
Maybe that's his creeper name. He goes by Sprinkles. Mr. Sprankles. But anyways, here's Carl talking to him also. But getting back in, on November 2nd, Dr. Sprinkles drove to Carl's home for the first of several regressive hypnosis sessions. Higdon was able to put more pieces of the experience together, and Sprinkle invited a local art teacher to make a drawing of Azo 1, which is that picture that I was mentioning a little bit earlier, and a little bit better rendition of this being.
Okay.
Dr. Sprinkle went on to meet with Marilyn James, Sheriff Ogden, Dr. Tango, Carl's nurse at the hospital, and some members of the search party and several locals. Those who knew Carl said that they considered him honest and hardworking. Psychological and psychiatric tests at the University of Wyoming revealed no signs of mental illness. See, when you have two words that start with the same beginning, you kind of just like fall into the rut of the first words you said.
It's a tongue twister.
One evening, Carl suggested to Marjorie they go out for a drive with their son. Carl drove a few miles south of town, taking a dirt road up a hill, seemingly knowing where he was going. Over 150 feet in the sky above him, the family saw a bright green light shaped like a large upside-down ice cream cone and smelled a terrible odor of dirty socks or sulfur. Distressed, Carl then announced, "I am late. I was to be here a few minutes ago, or a few minutes earlier." So you got any thoughts on the whole sulfur thing already and the weird him being drawn to this location?
Yeah, I mean, how many times do we talk about the smell of sulfur on this show? It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Aliens, Bigfoot, I mean, even like more paranormal ghost type stuff. The smell of sulfur, it's always present. The thing about him like being drawn to this location, this is something that I've come across, and I'm sure you have as well, a lot in like these UFO cases. When someone has an abduction or a sighting or an experience, it seems like a lot of times they are like, for some reason, drawn to go back to locations. And a lot of times they'll like not know where this location is, but you know, it's the same story. They just say they had this urge to get in the car and drive to this place, and then they have some sort of other encounter.
See, I'm kind of curious if that crossroads that he drew may have been that location, because it never confirmed or denied it, but I'm kind of curious, because then it kind of goes into the whole idea of like, what's the name of that movie? Where the guy makes like the potato mountain. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Is that it?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he had that whole thing where he kept making the potato mountain in that movie, and then he was drawn to that mountain, ended up going to that mountain. I mean, again, that movie was inspired by true cases, of course. And
if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the Project Blue Book guy like a consultant?
Yep.
On that movie?
Yep. That's where all the weirdness gets in with the sounds and the communication through sound and all that type of stuff. Is it's like, all right, maybe they had something going on here and they knew a little bit more.
What's the guy's name? I've got it like right on the tip of my tongue.
Steven Spielberg was the one that made the movie.
Yeah, no, the Project Blue Book guy, J. Allen Hynek.
Yep. So, I don't know, just kind of a weird connection there. Just, again, not to relate it to a movie, but it seems like a lot of the time they purposely will try to make it so that you relate these things to a movie, because then it kind of pulls away from the actual validity of the experience, it seems.
Soft disclosure.
Exactly. I mean, they gotta trademark all these little things throughout movies, so when people see that, they go, "Oh, like this movie," and then it instantly throws it in the realm of science fiction for most people,
and not science fact.
Not science fact. Maybe for us it's science fact, but not for the others. Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in. A few nights later, Carl woke Marjorie and said, "I know it was weird. I am in bed with you, yet I am out south of town. They are telling me, look for the black box." He felt that they were telling him that they could contact him whenever they wanted to. This made Carl quite distressed and triggered his shoulder pain again. Numerous times on Carl's drive to and from work, he was followed by lights in the sky that others saw as well, and both Carl and Marjorie felt that their phones were tapped.
More John Keel connections here.
Yep, and the whole "we will be seeing you" thing, so I mean, maybe a connection with that too, whether it's human or extraterrestrial. I mean, it's still there, you know?
Either way.
I mean, it's almost creepier in another way if it is human, because then it's like, all right, we may have done this shit to you, but we're going to keep an eye on you to make sure you're not saying too fucking much.
I mean, we know the government's kind of like tracking us and keeping an eye on us anyway, but if they're this blatant about it, I mean, what are you going to do at that point?
Fuck that. Yeah, fuck that.
That's right, Cleveland.
Carl. Sorry, I had to cough it out. Sorry, everybody. Ugh. All right. Carl claims that he still has telepathic communication with Azo on rare occasions. For example, Carl once told Azo that Rawlings needed some rain. The next day, it rained 3 inches. Then another 2 inches the following day before he told Azo to stop the rain and seized it. So kind of a weird one there. Higdon speculated that before shooting his rifle on the day of the incident, he had entered some type of force field that slowed his bullet down. At one point, Carl, along with Don, Marilyn, and others, returned to the location of the incident to take pictures and scan for metal, seeking, hopefully, to find the missing lead of the bullet. At that spot where the transparent box had sat, they noticed that nearby leaves were burnt, and some trees in the area had strange, weathered carvings. Any comments on that one? I mean, it kind of sounds like, what was that one that we covered like when you first started the show? The Devil's Tramping Ground or something?
Yeah, the Devil's Tramping Ground. Yep. Yeah, kind of like the fairy circle type thing in North Carolina.
Yeah, especially with the like weathered markings on the trees and the burnt leaves and stuff. I mean, it seems like it kind of fits that typical motif, whether it's something extraterrestrial or something fey, you still kind of got the same elements here.
No, I thought about that when I was reading this section. I didn't know if I was just making like too much of a jump there, so I'm glad you said that.
No, I can't leave any stone unturned, my friend. And also, speaking of no stone unturned, I wanted to clarify this because I got confused when I was reading the book originally, that if everybody remembers, initially when he shot this thing, he put the bullet in his pocket, and now it mentions that they're looking for the lead of the bullet. And I got a little definition here just to verify for anybody that may not be familiar. A bullet is the projectile fired from the gun, while the lead is the dense, soft metal core material found in most traditional bullets that is designed to deform upon impact. So essentially, to break this down, if you're not really catching the picture, when you shoot the bullet, it has the metal tip, and then it has stuff on the inside. And when it makes impact with something, the bullet's still there, but that stuff in the back comes out of the back, or it blows forward into whatever it is. So he found the bullet, but the inside of the bullet was missing, and that's what they're looking for, and they never were able to find it.
Okay.
So getting into the next part, which is why I wanted to verify that, the bullet he put in his pocket was later examined by investigators led by Dr. Walter Walker, a metallurgy consultant for the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, or APRO. Walker could only conclude that it hit something hard to turn it inside out. The bullet was also examined by a meteorologist at the University of Wyoming. Sometime after, the bullet disappeared from the university's safe.
It's a conspiracy, man.
The typical shit. Because how many cases have we covered where like the main component has disappeared? Like you have the whole case with that weird sphere that was down in Florida that the government said, "Oh, let us check it out," and then the sphere like disappeared. I know that there's like numerous ones. We talked about one semi-recently. That
Kecksburg.
Yep, the Kecksburg. That's what it was. That was one
like,
that just
supposedly all the government's initial files and reports on the Kecksburg UFO incident just went missing, and then like this reporter had to do like a Freedom of Information Act request and basically like sue the government to try to get these missing documents. So yeah, this comes up time and time again.
And it's a question of, are they taking it because it's something bizarre that they need to research, or are they taking it because it's evidence of something that they're doing?
Probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both, yep. That's what I was thinking. So getting into towards the end, the analysis here, the TV crew from the show In Search Of visited Rawlings, as did a Japanese film crew. The National Enquirer also arranged for Carl to take a polygraph test, which he passed. Marjorie said she was compelled to write Carl's story decades prior to self-publishing the narrative in 2017 under the title Alien Abduction of the Wyoming Hunter, First-Person Accounts of Carl Higdon, which is the book that I, of course, pulled all this information from today.
So just to stop you real quick, how did you find out about this book? Did like a guest on Inquiries tell you about it? Because like this is not a story I had like ever even heard of.
Actually, I had a guest on the show a really long time ago. Actually, I think he's been on this show before. Oh crap! What's his name? Crap. I know I have one of the books right here because he wrote the Men of Renown book. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Interesting radio for everybody. I want to make sure I give this guy a shout out because he's the one I got this from. 1 second. Denver Michaels. That's it.
Okay.
So he had brought up that he was doing a book about Wyoming, and this was one of like a really small section of his book that he covered in it. So because I found it off of his book, because I had him as a guest on the show a really long time ago, I wanted to come around to doing this finally. So this was originally where I heard this from, was a guest from Inquiries when I first started the show, and he had like a 1-page portion of this in one of his books, which what not a better place to pull out of is an encounter that nobody's heard of.
You know, it's kind of funny how, you know, the stories that get famous and the stories that don't. Like we talked about the Cisco Grove encounter recently. We talked about this one.
How are both of these not more talked about than like Betty and Barney Hill or something? Like these are
and Pascagoula. Like these are no different than Pascagoula. Like how is that one like this big renowned ufological, you know, case study, but I've never even fucking heard of this one. You know, so it's just kind of funny, and it makes you wonder, okay, why do some stories get a lot of publicity and get famous, quote unquote, and some of this stuff you've never even heard of and just get swept under the rug? I mean, kind of makes me wonder if there's almost more validity to these you've never heard of.
That's kind of what I was thinking, especially the fact that this has a very clear drawing idea of what this creature was. So it has that what people want, like something to visually see. Like that's the creature from this encounter. Not to mention the fact that, again, it's just an extremely bizarre encounter. The guy passed polygraph tests, all this type of stuff with this, and also got abducted and then thrown back. Like, how bizarre of a case is that? Like, I'm kind of in your boat with this, that I feel like a lot of these cases are probably intentionally pushed under the rug. And also, I mean, maybe some marketing. Like, this one doesn't have like a name, you know, like the Cisco Grove encounter. It's just the abduction of a Wyoming hunter. Like, it's very
abduction of the Wyoming hunter, first-person account of Carl Higdon doesn't really roll off the tongue.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and the book came out in like 2017, so this has been somewhat known for at least like, you know,
like 40 or 50 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like I said, the book came out in 2017, so I'm surprised that, again, why is there not more with this? I mean, I feel like it's because there's a lot of good validity to it.
Know, just as simple as marketing, for lack of a better term. Like if this had like a super cool name, if this happened at like the Devil's Armpit or some shit like that, you know, then you could be like, oh, it's the Devil's Armpit UFO encounter. You know, I wonder if it's just that simple.
They could have called it the Azo 1 encounter.
That, but I wonder if it's part of it, you know?
They could have called it the Azo 1 encounter. I mean, that kind of flows off the tongue.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what I'll call the episode. I don't know. I still haven't. I'm having a hard time placing this one because it's just the Wyoming Hunter encounter, Carl Higdon. Like it's so hard to like paraphrase into like one word.
Carl
you know,
Higdon encounter is basically like the best you can come up with, and that just doesn't sound that exciting.
Yeah, the Carl Higdon Azo 1 encounter. Like I don't know, man. Like maybe it is partially marketing, and it's just some of these stories just get swept under the rug because something else more prominent takes over. You know, drill hands. If you got 2 drill hand guys and there's 2 of them, of course it's going to take precedence over a single drill hand guy.
That's twice the drill hands.
That's twice the drill hands going on, man. Not to mention there was a female involved, and you know how those stories go.
Well, that's just way sexier.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if there had been a sexy drill hand robot lady in this encounter, I mean, everybody'd know about it.
Yeah, I mean, Pascagoula, they got strapped down to a table and a sexy drill hand lady came out. I mean, what else could you ask for?
Sign me up.
Why is there not a movie for that one, you know?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
It's probably really bad, but we should find it and see if there is a Pascagoula movie. And if there isn't, then we should start lobbying whatever film company I have to make a Pascagoula movie.
It might not be Pascagoula, but I promise you there's a sexy robot drill hand lady movie out there somewhere. If you know what I'm getting.
I know what you're saying. It's like Edward, you know what hands. I feel like it'd be something along those lines, but... Anyways, getting into the missing 411 stuff, in 2022, David Paulides made one of several documentaries about people going missing in unusual circumstances. Paulides conducted new interviews with Carl and his wife and compared the case's similarities to other disappearances in the same region. Paulides noted the significance of Higdon being dropped at the end of the incident. This is consistent with hundreds of cases of unusual deaths that he investigated where the recovered bodies appeared to have been dropped from above. The fact that there was apparently no tracks leading to the muddy spot where Carl's pickup was recovered suggests that it was dropped as well. Researchers such as Linda Moulton Howe have documented that many cases of animal mutilation involve carcasses with broken legs, no surrounding tracks, and impacted soil, suggesting that they too were dropped. And also to point it out, I don't know if you've seen that video, but there's that really weird surveillance video of the inside of a barn where this cow just drops through the fucking ceiling. Have you ever seen that video?
I don't think so.
Yo, dude, I'll have to find it and send it to you. But yeah, there's this video where it's just, like I said, surveillance video of a fucking cow getting dropped through the roof of a barn. Like, tell me how the logic of that makes sense. And then the people that filmed it claim that they were seeing a bright light above their barn, and then later on they checked their surveillance footage and found that. So, I mean, even if you're faking that, how do you drop a cow through the roof of your barn? Like,
yeah.
What the hell?
Well, and just a couple little things I'll throw in here. I don't think you specifically talk about this in the notes and the kind of missing 411 connections, but in the documentaries, Paulides talks a lot about how, you know, when these kids go missing in national parks and whatnot, they'll extensively search these areas, find no evidence of these kids, nothing. And then, you know, whatever, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, some hunter or hiker or somebody, you know, stumbles across like a skull fragment or like a pair of sweatpants neatly folded or a pair of shoes or something like that.
How many cases have there been with like the water and stuff too? They'll search an area.
Yeah.
They'll come back 2 days later and there'll be a body in the water where they know they looked.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of is more feathers in the cap of this stuff is just dropped theory. You know, if you had this wide spanning search party looking in these areas, find nothing, and then all of a sudden these, you know, skull fragments or sweatpants or whatever end up showing up there, something weird's going on there. Either like, you know, a murderer is returning to the scene of the crime, or, you know, something far stranger is going on.
I mean, apparently they think that we float like them, because it made reference a few times to the fact that these things didn't walk; they kind of floated towards him. So maybe with their logic, when they dropped, they got that couple inches of impact, so they just boop, they're fine.
But wouldn't that kind of get back to like changes in gravity and density and things like that?
I mean, it might even have something to do with the technology they're using, because I would assume that they would like they wouldn't float on this planet, but it made reference to the fact that it floated towards him. So they either have some type of technology or something, or getting into the even weirder aspect of things with abduction. A lot of people talk about these things literally like taking their soul or consciousness out of the body. I mean, maybe some of these experiences with these things, it's not the physical version of them here. It's like, for lack of a better term, like a projection almost, or like an avatar, yes, of them here. Maybe that's why they appear to float, you know?
Yeah.
And also on the other flip side of it, you know, if they're just abducting people, sometimes they take the soul or consciousness, other times they take the full person. Maybe they kind of have the same thing, or they just kind of toss it back and they don't really put 2 cents into like, oh, this is the physical version and this is the soul version, or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought for sure.
But this is where it also gets kind of weird. Carl believed that some kind of medical examination occurred when the shield or wall dropped in front of him. If you guys remember that part when they were walking towards the tower thing, and then he somehow failed the test. While Carl initially suspected that he was rejected due to the effects of the light on his eyes, he later suggested that it was due to his vasectomy. And I feel like we've heard that somewhere else before too, and I can't quite place it.
Well, this gets back to Keel ideas as well. Yeah, in Mothman Prophecies, he talks about how the phenomenon, whatever you want to call it, seems to be obsessed with like human reproduction. And if whatever, nefarious purposes these things are abducting people for, if it is truly reliant on genetic material or, sperm and eggs or something like that, it would kind of make sense that, okay, they threw this guy back because he wasn't a valid specimen,
And I threw this theory a long time ago on Inquiries when we were doing like a UFO roundtable. But then I later had L.A. Marzulli on the show, and he had even more expansion on the idea. So I know that at least two people are thinking parallel, so there must be something to it. What is usually missing with a lot of these cows? See if you can kind of throw it offhand.
Well, normally it's like their udders or their anus or things like that, or like eyeballs and tongue.
And womb, too, is usually one of the things that are missing.
Yeah, like reproductive organs for sure. Yeah.
And the blood, right? So I threw the whole connection that, if they are abducting people and they are trying to produce something, are they using these cattle wombs as artificial wombs? And I threw that theory a long time ago, just out in the air. And like I said, later on, I had L.A. Marzulli on the show, and he's done a lot more into this. And he basically has found that you apparently can use a cow's womb to synthesize a human's womb because they're relatively close. And also, you can apparently use cow's blood with that womb to make a synthetic womb. So there's like a connection with that. So, I mean, is it possible that, again, the interest is with reproducing whatever it is, and they abduct the cows and take the blood because they're actually using them as some type of like synthetic womb? Because assumably, if this thing is hybrid, it's probably going to have some of the extraterrestrial features, which usually some of those features involve, bigger body parts, such as the bigger head. And if a normal woman was to, have that baby, it would probably kill and destroy them. So you get into the whole idea about these babies end up disappearing when you get into the whole weird aspect of UFO abduction with like babies and stuff. They disappear before they get to full term. Is the reason for that because they know that a woman isn't going to be able to birth this thing once it gets to its normal size, so they have to use the cow wombs?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just to go like super left field, but something that popped into my head, this idea that, these babies are taken because a human woman couldn't bear them. I've heard a lot of like Nephilim researchers talk about.
That's L.A. Marzulli because he's a Christian researcher. That's his perspective. So
yeah, and that gets back to, connections between Nephilim and UFOs and demons and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that basically to bear these Nephilim children, human women basically had to be hybridized or their genes corrupted or whatever. So they were big and tall and strong enough to bear these Nephilim children. So another strange connection there.
And also, that being said, I mean, we have our typical ideas about how big a baby human would be, but these things clearly don't usually have sexual reproductive organs. With a lot of the Greys and everything, they talk about the fact that they don't. So what is like the finished state of it? What's like the baby form of it? There may not be what we would expect to be a baby form. It might be a matter of like when they produce these things, they become full size because they're not something that's naturally produced anyways.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe even going further into the cow's womb idea, you could probably almost birth like a full-size person inside of a cow's womb. You know what I mean? Like that'd be probably about the size of a full-size Grey, right?
I mean, it probably would be more than enough room for a Grey.
See, maybe possible another connection, and that's why they got to pull them out. After usually it's like a month or two into like the pregnancy. That's when the babies usually disappear, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it seems like it's 2-3 months in.
It's super duper early, like to the point where they could probably like surgically remove it without leaving any visible anything. But they do end up leaving some visible stuff because you hear a lot of these cases of women who have never had kids, as they say, and then they'll go to get checked out and their womb looks like it's had like 200 babies. Like, have you heard of those cases?
Yeah, and it seems like in a lot of these cases, like you're like, excuse me, there's a fruit fly flying around me. But anyway, like it's very early on in the pregnancies, and a lot of the victims, for lack of a better term, like doubt if they were even pregnant, so there's definitely a lot to unpack with like these phantom pregnancies and just everything of that nature. That would be a really cool episode or series to do at some point.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to, and I'm sure we could probably find some more cases with possibly people with vasectomies being thrown back, or later connection with that. But I'm surprised they threw them back and didn't just say, all right, we already took you, so we got to get rid of you now.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting.
I mean, maybe the intention was that he wasn't supposed to make it once they kicked him out, you know?
It's possible.
They're like, yeah, we'll be seeing you.
We'll see you in time.
We'll see you in hell.
Sit tight, guys. We got to pay some bills. And now back to the show.
The fact that Carl apparently healed from his lung scarring and his kidney stones is also significant. Preston Dennett, who's a former guest on, I believe, this show, right? Hasn't he been on this show?
I don't think on this show. I don't recall talking to him.
Oh, he's been on Inquiries twice, so maybe he's another person that we could have on the show. So Trey Hudson, Preston Dennett, two people we got to make sure we get on the show. Has compiled over 300 cases involving spontaneous healing connected to UFOs or entity encounters. Dennett concluded that the beings in these encounters are advanced extraterrestrials, neither benevolent nor malevolent, healing people for reasons beyond just testing and experimentation. And that gets into the whole weird idea with people that we kind of have this idea of like good, bad, like everything's inherently this or that. And we talk about it all the time on the show that I don't think the universe works like that. I think a lot of things just have a purpose and that's it. Like even to relate it to our world, everybody sees wasps as evil. Like nobody likes wasps. Let's just admit it. But like they don't see what they're doing as evil. They don't see what they're doing as bad. And their purpose in nature is to kill mosquitoes. That's like their primary that they do. So it's like everybody hates wasps, but they get rid of the more annoying creature. But again, they're not inherently good or bad. They're just doing their job. So why is it that, you know, we have to put that connotation that we simply have on humans onto everything else? Because nothing else in nature perceives itself as good or bad. It's just, that's strictly a human concept.
Well, and to bring it back around to Keel, since that's my theme of this episode, you know, even with Mothman, everybody's like, oh, was it a harbinger of doom or was it trying to warn people? Well, what if this thing was just hanging out? You know, it doesn't have to be some deeper meaning in everything. And I think with these kind of, you know, heady out there concepts, we kind of get stuck in the weeds sometimes of, oh, well, this has to all mean something. And like you said, some things could just be, you know?
We have to put human context on everything. Like even when I was talking about with categories of things, like we make these specific categories of things and act like this is the set category. And it's like, I don't think it works like that either. We're trying to make sense of things simply. Like that's the whole human concept, is that we try to make sense of the world around us. So we put all of these human concepts on things that don't play by the same rules.
Well, I think especially when it's something, you know, weird and out of the ordinary, we're going to look for a weird and out of the ordinary and spectacular explanation for it one way or the other. And it's not, you know, sexy and exciting to be like, hey, maybe this like fucking weird moth thing was just hanging out, you know?
And I mean, even for the UFO stuff, I mean, it's not nearly as exciting to think that they might just be simply doing the same thing that we do to nature, just documenting it and studying it for the sake of studying it, you know? Like, nobody wants to hear that they're, you know, the experiment or the research project. Like, of course, that sounds bad. You know, we had this whole connotation of like, oh, they're trying to steal our DNA or do this or do that or blah, blah, blah. But it might simply be exactly how we interact with nature. You see a hurt animal in nature, if you have the ability to bring it back and fix it and kick it back out, you do that. I mean, it seems like the same with a lot of these things. It's like, even on the flip side of that, I mean, it sounds kind of messed up, but you find a beautiful animal in the woods, people end up taking it sometimes and they put it in their version of a zoo. I mean, that could be also what's happening with these things. Like, they might not see us on the same level as them. If they see us as significantly less advanced than them, then where's that line at of like, what, like I said, like an ant, like if we take any animal, anything like that, people don't think twice about it. Like, why can't we kind of view that in this context?
Well, and even in this very story, it talks about how, you know, they've just been coming here to basically like harvest food for their food pills. Like, what if that's all there is to it? What if they're not, you know, intervening in human history and guiding us as a species? It's just like, hey man, we fucked up our waters. We just need some food pills.
And I mean, that kind of gets into the whole idea about Earth possibly being like a seed planet, that it's like you have all these different extraterrestrials that are coming here clearly because you get all these different renditions, but it seems like a lot of them are doing the same thing. Maybe the whole thing is the reason why we don't encounter stuff, we're not seeing all this crazy stuff, is because we're in some distant corner of the galaxy and we're just the bank in case anybody needs it, which could also be why they have such an interest in nuclear, because they're like, all right, you guys aren't going to fuck up our bank. Like, if you guys fuck up this planet, we're all fucked.
But wouldn't that be like the most ironic thing ever, is if, you know, all these crazy big concepts, it just comes down to something super duper mundane. Like that just seems like it would be par for the course. Like if there ever was a solution or an answer, that's probably what it is.
What do they say? The simplest answer is usually the correct
Occam's
one.
razor. Yep.
There was a disappearance in the same forest that Carl was abducted from almost exactly 35 years later. Mark Anthony Strummatter had 15 years experience hunting in the region at the time he disappeared on October 19th, 2019. Similar to Higdon, the spot Mark disappeared from happened to be an area he'd never hunted in before. Interestingly, at the conclusion of the previous hunt, Mark saw a black UFO that followed him for a time. Like Higdon and many other missing persons, Mark was of German ethnicity but never had a vasectomy. Ufologist Jacques Vallée has noted that many historical encounters with fairies, elves, and other mythical creatures involve the experiencer being offered some type of food. In several such cases, people who cooperated with the fairy folk are rewarded with an inexhaustible food supply. At the same time, Irish tradition holds that if you take food from the fairy world, you become a fairy yourself and never return to the mortal realm. There are many other UFO-related entity encounters on record that involve the beings floating over the ground, or otherwise floating above in a very unusual way. For example, the creatures that emerged from the craft of Pascagoula, as we mentioned earlier, Pascagoula, Mississippi, floated out of the craft, and the so-called goblins, aka the Hopkinsville goblins, hovered over the ground by swaying their hips back and forth. Another unusual detail is the fact that Azo measured the distance from this planet to Earth in light miles rather than light years. I don't know if you caught that earlier, but that's why I was trying to see if you'd catch that and link in.
Until I got to this point in the notes.
Many UFO abduction experiences contain absurd elements like this. For example, the Italian abductee Pereira Ferrento Fanzferretta claimed the giant guild aliens told them that they came from the third galaxy, an extremely simplistic and astrologically meaningless description. But, I mean, going into that, of course, it may sound choppy to us, but it might make sense from a different perspective because, you know, not everybody is viewing the universe or anything from the earthly perspective. So just because we use the terminology doesn't mean the rest of everything else uses that same terminology.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, this is kind of like another hallmark of the Men in Black encounters is these kind of like really off the wall weird details. And also there's something there with the either asking for food or offering food. I feel like there's some Men in Black connection there too. I don't quite have it on the tip of my tongue, but there's something there to unpack.
Well, I almost feel like when he got the food pills, that may have been where something kicked in, where he started experiencing like this memory loss and stuff, especially because he felt like it was like forced in, even though he wasn't really necessarily wanting to take it. Like, I feel like there may have been, like, even going into like the human aspect of things. I mean, we talk about this whole thing that we think that the manipulation kind of starts after they kick in with some type of like psychedelic or some type of chemical that they've produced. And I mean, this could be an exact link to that. I mean, different variations because... And we were talking about a Cisco Grove. That was, what, 1971? Right? Yeah, 1971. And that had...
the same general time period.
Yep, and that had the mist that kind of had that effect. So maybe, again, another predecessor to that, trying to make it a little bit better, where clearly the mist didn't work that great because they tried it out on another guy and he kept fucking waking up in the tree. So they're like, all right, we need to find some way that they can just eat this directly.
We got to roofie this guy.
Yeah, we got to roofie this motherfucker. So if we tell him that it's a food pill, maybe he'll eat it. We'll try that one out. Or maybe even a different drug altogether they were testing out. Because, again, I don't know which way to go with this one. It seems like it has some of the human elements, but it also has some of the extraterrestrial elements to it. Because, I mean, even the glass cube room thing that he was being moved around in, they say technology is at least 30 years, ahead of where it actually is. So if you look at the early 2000s, they definitely had those, like, art museums and things where it was, like, a room where, everything moves and shifts and everything. Could this have been that? I mean, could the whole intention of that could have been military grade, and the reason why, like most things, it's in museums now is because it kind of fulfilled its purpose for them?
Yeah, that's definitely possible.
So he may not have even moved anywhere. He may have just been in a simple, like, white room with stuff moving around on the outside walls,
Yeah.
But reading Higdon's account, it is easy to infer that he was meant to be taken away forever, but was unexpectedly rejected. It may be that some people who have gone missing under unusual circumstances were abducted in a similar manner and simply not returned again. In other words, The kinds of missing person cases investigated by David Paulides may be due, in part, to some of the same phenomenon responsible for many UFO abduction experiences and other anomalous entity encounters. Whatever reason his abductor had for rejecting Carl, it may very well have saved his life. All right, guys, this is our last break, so hold on tight.
And now back to the show.
And that's all that I have for you guys on this one. So, Orin, what are your closing thoughts on this one?
Well, first off, thank you for putting this one together. You've been kind of teasing this one for a while with me, and I was not prepared for how many connections and whatnot there was going to be when I was reading through the notes. I was super excited to do this one. So
the book ones, I want to make sure I do just, because these book ones are, like you mentioned, some of the obscure cases that nobody's really covered. So I want to make sure I try to do them just if we're one of the only people that cover it.
So yeah, first off, thank you for putting this one together. Super interesting. This might be my favorite episode you've ever put together.
And if you wanted to read the book, by the way, it is available on Amazon for about $5 because it's a very thin book. You could read it in a night.
Definitely worth $5. But yeah, kind of my take home point on this one is, like we've said, the fact that some encounters get so big and so famous and others don't kind of makes you wonder. It kind of lends more credence to me that this could be true because we've never heard of this encounter.
I don't think I've heard any other show even like slightly mention this one. I'm pretty sure the only reference I've heard to this one was from Denver. Michael's talking about it.
Yeah. And, you know, we talked about your kind of human continued experiment theory a lot. I don't get a lot of human vibes in this one, honestly. Like, there's just so many weird off-the-wall things in this one that connect to Keel and the Men in Black. And, you know, this is not that long after the whole Mothman thing. So, I mean, that's kind of where I go with it. Like, the Men in Black aspects just keep, like, beating me over the head with this one. And that's kind of my big takeaway from this is, whatever the whole Indrid Cold thing is, I wonder if this guy met some of those entities as well.
I mean, I almost wonder if Ingrid Cole could be the same species as this thing because they, other than the ears and stuff like that, they just seem a lot more humanoid than a lot of the other things that people encounter. Or a lot more human-like. I don't want to say humanoid because, you know, but human-like.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this has a lot of connections to Pascagoula as well, but yeah, super cool episode. So what's kind of your takeaway? Where do you land on this one?
See, this one, like I was saying, it's kind of a hard direction to go in because it has to have some of these human elements, but it also has some of these very extraterrestrial elements.
And some just weird off-the-wall things.
Yeah, they might possibly be somewhat combined. I mean, you get into the whole theory about, you know, humans working with these things. Maybe that could be it. Or flipping to what you were kind of saying about certain cases becoming a little bit more popular than others. Maybe the reason why this one didn't become popular was because this guy simply may have said the truth as, yeah, we just come here to get food and stuff and then we leave. Like, you know, maybe it didn't become popular because it had too much truth in it, you know? Maybe this is the truth of the extraterrestrials is, you know, the humans try to make this whole
agenda.
Yeah, the humans try to make this whole facade of all this crazy shit going on and this and that. I think that might be the humans, and these simple encounters are probably the extraterrestrials.
Yeah, like I said, and I think this is where I'll leave it, but wouldn't it be the most ironic thing ever if we're looking for all these big, weighty, heavy, heady topics, and, you know, at the end of the day, it's just something as simple as they're just harvesting food pills.
I mean, even on a flip side of that, you want to get into the Anunnaki thing. What do they come here for? We fucked up our planet with radiation, so we need gold. So we're just going to take that and we're going to leave. So this is a motif that you see with other extraterrestrials. They just come to get something and then they're out.
You heard it here first. Aliens are colonizers.
Only partial colonizers, because they colonize off planet because we're too fucking crazy for them. They're afraid we're going to blow each other up. They don't want to be involved in that. Unless they're hiding under the surface, which that's a whole other theory. Or under the water. I mean, would not a better place to put a colony than under the water where the humans won't bother you with their nuclear weapons until we start making nuclear subs and now you got to move their bases.
That might have to be your next deep dive that you do for us, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could do some underwater-based stuff. I feel like that's kind of become popular with a lot of the UFO stuff recently, like what's coming out with the government documents and everything. Because I feel like there's been
So that probably means it's bullshit.
Yeah, probably. Or again, maybe there's something to it because you got to muddy the waters enough where, you know, it's the whole idea of lie, truth, lie. You know, you gotta throw out a bunch of lies, but you gotta throw out some truths in there because then the truths get grouped in with the lies. And if anything that they've thrown out,
compliment sandwich.
Exactly. And like, if they've thrown out one thing that doesn't sound ridiculous in the past like 5 years with all this extraterrestrial stuff, tell me the one not crazy sounding thing is underwater bases. Because they've given us those shitty bodies from Mexico. They gave us all this other shit. They said UFOs, here's a bunch of videos of it, here's all this, underwater bases, and they went back on to other UFO stuff. So I feel like...
How many times have we heard, oh, we know more about space than we do the bottom of the ocean. So yeah, maybe you're onto something there.
And talking about some more cases that get pushed under the rug. Do you remember that thing in Miami with the mall like a year ago? What happened with that? We never heard anything else about that. It got pushed out of the feed. All the video surveillance footage is gone. Like nobody's... Dude, that whole mall was covered in cameras. There's no videos that came out about that?
No, there's nothing to see here.
Even the Las Vegas one where those cops supposedly went in the back seat or the backyard after seeing something crash and you could kind of see something moving and tucking behind shit. That's another one. Pooh! You don't even hear it talked about in the UFO community.
Well, hey, we've moved on to all sorts of other craziness since then. But anyway, before we get too off the rails here at the end, Shayn, if anyone wants to get up with us for any reason whatsoever, tell them how they can do that.
We have a handful of convenient ways that you guys can do so. First and foremost, you guys can get a hold of us through our email, which is bizarreencounters@outlook.com. Or you guys can get a hold of us through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the two that we're the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of us through our submission forum, which is up at the top of our link tree and goes directly to our email. And the last way you guys can get a hold of us, and you guys could also call in to be part of our Halloween special, you guys could call the Bizarre Reality Media Hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you happen to miss that number or any of our other contact information, it is available down in the show description.
And you guys be sure to show some love to our friends and sponsors of the show. We got our buddies Rick and Hans with I Know Squatch for all your squatchy gear needs. We've got our buddy Dave, a.k.a. the Snarly Yow, with Snarly Yow Natural Products. And we've got our buddy Joe with Cryptoteology for all your wearable cryptids.
And if you got some free time, don't forget to check out our other friends with some affiliate links, Dimension Devices and Sticker Mule, with some additional discounts and credits available for you guys. And more information on that is available down in the show description.
And as always, all this shit we've mentioned is in the link tree in the show description.
And just like we always have to remind you guys, and I brought back the shirt because it's an oldie but a goodie, always to remember to stay bizarre. Bizarre. Bizarre.
Aliens or colonizers?
You know what? Fucking take a shit!